Greetings, viewers. Welcome to Women of Authority Africa on Clevernet TV in Diaspora. My name is Noluthando Ncizela Kalembede. Unonzaba uXesibe umolokazana wondima bayeni omchunu. Welcome to our edition tonight. On this day, we have Mrs. Phindile Mazindo, a mother, a wife, a businesswoman, a speaker, professional speaker, an accredited NLP practitioner, and also an accredited facilitator. We are going to be talking about the topic of overcoming the stigma of divorce and finding new love. Welcome, Mrs. Phindile Mazindo, on Women of Authority Africa. It's so good to have you tonight.
Thank you so much, madam. It's always a pleasure to share a platform with you and an honor. And thank you to our viewers at home. It's incredible to meet them, meet them.
Thank you. Mrs. Mazindo and I go a long way. We've been in ministry together on Women of Authority Foundation Conference for the last 8 years, and we've dealt with various subjects. But tonight's subject is a very close and personal subject to us. It speaks about women who have gone through an experience of divorce. And most of the time in the ministry, it is misunderstood what divorce is and actually how it impacts the person in ministry and also impacts the people that are the followers, but also impacts the very person that is dealing with the divorce at the time. So we are going to cover the subject of overcoming the stigma of divorce and also finding new love. Mrs. Mazindo, tell us more about you, your experience in the past.
More about me. I don't have to introduce myself. I think you've done that. I come from a background that is so similar to today's topic. So I will not just be sharing from a professional point of view as a neurolinguistic practitioner or professional personal life coach, development life coach, but I'll be speaking from personal experience. And I think it's quite important when you are able to relay your own experiences to somebody else and match that up with theory. I think it makes an impact, because at the end of the day, we unfortunately live in a society where the divorce rate is quite high. And doing such talks or interviews, one could mistakenly think that we are condoning divorce, and yet we are not. The reality is people are divorced. The reality is there is a certain age group where divorce is quite prevalent. And so doing such talks, though, the aim is to strengthen the one who is divorced, but it's also sort of to give an alert to a person who's currently married to say, just be on the lookout, be on the watch for your marriage, be watchful of the things that you do, that you don't end up in the same space. I think that in my background as also a marriage coach, I have found that marriage is a very delicate institution, and at times people don't treat it in its level of delicacy. People become very, careless with the institution of marriage. They misuse it, at times they abuse it, and it really is a lot of work. It's delicate and it's a lot of work, and a lot of work has to go into it. And sometimes when we don't put in the work, we end up losing our footing in the marriage. And of course, when one little hole opens, every pain floods in. Now, that's one aspect of why we end up divorcing. Another aspect is that at the end of the day, you are not married to yourself. No matter how well you may do things as a wife, no matter how well you may respect your husband and, serve him as best as you possibly can, no matter how much you can honor him and the likes, you are not married to yourself. And if he does not want to or is not willing to meet you halfway, at times you become so oppressed, at times you suffocate to a point where you cannot stay in that relationship, and you suffocate in forms of emotional abuse, financial abuse, physical abuse, and the likes. And even though we encourage people to continue to to stay married and, fix areas in their lives that they are lacking in the marriage sphere. We also cannot allow people to stay in a place where they are physically abused, because I'd rather sit with you and we do divorce counseling than have to bury you. I'm also a pastor, so I'd rather sit for hours hearing you out than having to conduct your funeral. I'd have the other choice. And so that's why we really encourage people to assess whether is it worth it to stay in that environment? Is it worth it? I mean, some environments are quite toxic. And because of that, the second that you enter into divorce, there's a lot of elements that come in. It's the pain that you endured during the marriage, the pain such that the person has deprived you of a greater future. They have caused stagnation in your life. They have caused you to not progress. You are regressing in some or other form. You lose your self-esteem, you lose your circles, you lose your friends, you lose your networks, and you've lost so much time. So there's a lot that you have to deal with internally and externally in order for you to even start picking up the pieces of your life. Now, I hope that I've answered your question in full.
Yes, you have.
I don't know if you want me to then relate on how, I come into the equation. I don't know whether you want me to.
Yeah, because I know that you come from that experience, and
Yes.
it was a painful experience for you, having been married at a very young age. Can you tell us more about it?
I grew up in the church and I personally received Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. There was no force from my parents or my mom. I was raised by my mom alone. And I think at that time, I took the gospel very seriously. I took Christianity very seriously. And because of that, I believed in things such as no sex before marriage. I believed in pure living. I used to look up to couples that I saw in the church that I felt like, wow. In those days, we didn't have the term power couple, but had it been now, I would have called those people power couples. And I had this utopia that I would love to be like those power couples. I'd love to preach the gospel. And at that very young age, I think I was in matric, I was already preaching and hosting revivals and crusade at the high school that I was in. And I was very intrigued by, preaching and serving God. And I was sold out. And I knew that I wanted to get married at age. I think I was probably 16 or so. I knew that I want to get married at a very young age. And so I think I had that open mind. And I think a lot of that came from my Christianity background, if that makes sense. It also came from a background where my family or my lineage or my bloodline, marriage was not such a prevalent thing. So a lot of my family members were not married. It's like as if there was a bloodline curse that we're not supposed to get married. So I was determined that this bloodline curse has to be broken. I think that all of that put together really made me feel like I have to get married as soon as I can so that I can start this future with this person and build my life and most importantly serve God. So when I was in matric, which is I assume you call it, others call it the 12th grade, I met this man when I was hosting a revival in my school. And I wouldn't say he was the perfect gentleman, but he was befitting of this image. It was befitting of this image I had in my mind of this person that I'm going to spend my life with, and I'm going to serve God and follow my dreams and break the curse in my family and start off young. And we dated, and he was working. And I was in school at that time. I ended up getting what you call a scholarship. I studied at a certain university. The company that I was working for actually paid for my studies, so I would work part-time and I'd study as well. I had a stipend because it wasn't a real job. It was like an internship training kind of a thing. So I had a stipend, and I worked really hard, and he was just a petrol attendant, and no offense, no offense. It's just not a petrol attendant. He was a cashier at a petrol station, and he was a pastor. So all he ever did after he left school was pastor a church that was handed over to him. And that's how he got, I suppose, his finances and money. So he didn't believe in working. He didn't believe in wealth. To him, it was everything will come down from heaven. A car will come down from heaven. A car will come down from heaven. So he never really believed in working hard to build wealth. or to be
Which was
successful.
something that was against your beliefs.
100%, we were like oil and water. There's nothing in us that was common. And I don't even, for the like of me, condemn how he lives his life or the beliefs that he has when it comes to wealth and money and prosperity and success. We all have our own beliefs and it's okay. It's just a problem that it clashed with mine. And because I was so young, I was naive enough not to, take it as a serious red flag. I didn't take it as a red flag. To me, it was, I'm going to pray this thing off. I'm going to fast 40 days and I'm going to pray all this out of him. That's how naive I was. And
Yeah.
that's just, for somebody that's watching us who's a bit young, who's got teenagers or young adults, I really advise that don't get married at a young age at all, because you're still trying to find yourself, you're still trying to find your footprint in the world, you're still trying to navigate around the world. At that time I was not exposed to Skype, for example. I didn't know that so many things are taking place. I was 19 years old, and here I am thinking that I can get married and start a life with somebody, and now you start discovering life and you start discovering, oh my goodness, I thought that I wanted to create wealth, but it's bigger than what I thought. There's so much to do. I've got goals, I've got vision, I've got a dream to fulfill. There's an education I want to attain. And you find yourself with all these dreams and somebody literally dragging you down because they are the opposite of you. And so during that time, we dated, and we ended up getting married when I was 20 years old. And that was primarily because we were dating so much, and so the church found out, and the pastor was very upset, and so we were sort of pushed to get married as soon as possible. And I was like, to make it fine, let's just get married. Literally was like that. I was like, fine, just bring the letter, let's go home, pay the dowry, and then we continue. So there was that session where the family met. The dowry was not paid in full, not everything was completed, but it had started, the process had started. And because we're seen frequently together, our pastors are like, guys, you really need to get married, like make this thing official, because we can't wait for the dowry and all that, bridal price, other people call it. And so we ended up just getting married. I literally did a wedding in 1 week with a stipend of about 4,000 Rand at that time. I was earning 4,000 Rand. I think, if I'm correct, that's about 280 pounds that I had to literally do the wedding with. And obviously I had a lot of debt because there were people that I had to borrow money from, others, service providers like the decor lady. I had to say to her, I will pay you, the loan in months to come. And I remember, and the reason why I'm being so detailed is because I just want to show how we push ourselves into marriage, yet we see that we are not supposed to be there, but we force the situation. And yet we wonder why some of these things start erupting inside of the marriage, or as the marriage goes on. We wonder, yet in the beginning, we allowed ourselves to settle in such a situation. That's a lesson on its own.
Would you say it would be a case of ignorance from our part, or would it be a case of excitement?
I think excitement and being naive. And, I think with me, it was my age. I think my age played a significant role because I was quite young. So I didn't think that I grasped the intensity of what I was doing and what it meant, and also how my ex-husband was. I think I just brushed it off. It was a very naive decision that I made. And so I think it's excitement, it's being naive, it's being head over heels, it's falling in love with your heart and not your heart and your head. It's very important to fall in love with your heart and your head as well, because when life strikes in the marriage, your heart is not going to protect you. It's the first thing that's going to break. It's going to crack. But if your head is intact, your mind is intact, you will know how to navigate through, the problems in marriage. So I think we need to learn to get married with our head as well. So there, the wedding took place, and then we were married, and he lost his job because he stole from, because remember, he was a petrol cashier. So he stole money, or not money. I think somebody bought airtime, and I think airtime worth 1,500 Rand or something. So instead of saying to the customer, you left your receipt, because how it's like in South Africa, you get the receipt with the number so you can load airtime on your mobile phone. So instead of telling the client to come back, he let the client go and took it for himself to load in his phone. And the cameras caught that. And apparently the boss swore at him, and he felt very insulted, and he never went back to work, and he never worked again. So I had to carry the marriage, I had to carry the family, I had to pay the bills with a stipend of 4,000 rand, which is about 250 pounds. I had to do everything, and I was 20 years old. This guy was 6 years older than me. It was such a difficult situation for me, and it went from bad to worse because he didn't want to work, he didn't want to support, he was not serious about life, he didn't have dreams and goals and aspirations. The guy didn't finish school, he didn't have a qualification, was not interested, didn't even want to open a business for crying out loud. Not all of us are going to be billionaires, not all of us are going to attain PhDs, but you have to have something, you have to have some form of an accolade, you have to have some form of accreditation in something, you must have something attached to your name except your birth certificate. And that's all that man had. He just had an idea, nothing else. Yes, he was a pastor, we can't downplay that. It's a calling, we understand, but it is not a career, right? It's not a career. And I felt like he was not doing enough for his life, and obviously it cascaded down to the marriage. The marriage broke down. The intimacy was no longer there. We were fighting. He used to hit me as well. And at this time, we were living in my grandfather's house, because my
So
mom
you
got
had
engaged.
to you had to carry the marriage financially and also
Yes,
carry him.
yes,
Wow.
basically. And it was very difficult because we were also living in my grandfather's house at that time, because I couldn't have lived with his family. We were gonna clash. It was just not gonna work. I'm a very finicky, picky person. I like things to the T. I cross all my T's, I dot all my I's. I don't want to use the word perfectionist, but I am a perfectionist to a certain extent, and I don't like bad attitude. I'm very detailed with how I want people to be around my space and my environment. So if I had to live with his family, that was not going to work. So we had to live with my mom in my grandparents' house, because my mom didn't have a house at that time. So we were carrying him financially, and he was living under my grandfather and my mother's roof, basically. And he hit me inside of my own mom's house, in my grandfather's house. I remember that particular night he hit me, and there was, because it was in the rural area, village, you call it. And so there was this other pole that actually upheld the roof or ceiling, and he removed it. That was a risk on the structure on its own, just to hit me with
Wow.
that pole. Just to hit me with that pole. I remember crying, crawling to my mom's room, and she was just screaming. She was hysterical. What's happening, guys? And my ex-husband was laughing, and he said, "I'll kill your child. I'll kill this girl." And my mom literally diffused the situation by ignoring him. She tried to take me outside just so that I can catch my breath, because I couldn't breathe. Basically, I cried so much that I couldn't breathe. And it was a lot of occurrences, and I ended up thinking that, God hates divorce because I'm Christian. My faith played a significant role in my life, and I didn't want to also have the stigma that we're talking about today of divorce. That's the last thing I wanted to do. I wouldn't want to be called a returned soldier, or somebody that is incapable of retaining a marriage or a man. The perfectionist in me cannot stand being rejected by society to that level and degree. So I had to make it work. I had to force the situation, force this marriage to work, yet I could see that it's not working. We are clashing, there's abuse involved, and possibly there was also adultery that I heard of. I think this was in a week after I actually separated from him. Apparently he was seeing another lady. And so I knew that this was not worth it. I knew that my destiny was greater, and it's either I choose my marriage or I choose my destiny. And at that point, I could distinctively see that my marriage was not part of my destiny. And so there was no ways that I could have settled for that. And I decided to walk away. I decided to walk away because I wanted to be alive, first of all, because I felt like had I stayed in that marriage, we would have killed each other, or yeah, or even depression, and to a point where I commit suicide or something, because I was very close to that, highly close to that. So I had to save myself. I had to save my destiny. I also had to save the people that were assigned to my life. I wouldn't be here at Cleveland TV speaking to you, being hosted by you. You wouldn't have known that I existed. At the time I was married to my first husband, you didn't know me, and you were not going to know me had I stayed in that marriage. And yet again, we are not condoning divorce. We are not promoting divorce. We are not railing for divorce, but there's some circumstances, it's beyond the normal typical fights or arguments or challenges. Those are part of life, you know. Challenges in marriage are inevitable. You can't avoid them. You can't run away from them. What I had in my marriage was far beyond challenges. It was far beyond a normal typical argument, you know, or altercation. It was destroying me. It was killing me. It was depriving me of the person that I was destined to be. And I was just not going to allow that to happen. And I decided to walk away. Um, with that with having said that, a lot of things changed. He managed to rally people against me, talking bad against me, hanging my dirty laundry. And, you know, Ms. Lambeda, I actually let him do it. I allowed him. I didn't counterattack. I didn't go into my social media. In fact, I shut down my Facebook at that time. It's a Facebook that doesn't exist anymore. Like, I shut it down when I came onto the social media scene. You know, I just started from scratch, and I literally disappeared from the face of the earth. The church that I was in, I had to leave because that's the church that he was in. I literally disappeared from the face of the earth. I probably was a less than a 10 minutes drive from, you know, his parents' home and my home, but I literally disappeared as if he's nowhere to be found, you know, or I'm nowhere to be found, rather. That was a time for me to heal. It was a time for me to recuperate. It was a time for me to find myself and find my direction. I think in less than 6 months or a year after our official divorce, he already was in a relationship. I think he got married in less than the year that we were divorced. Yeah, he got married to a much younger. I think at the time I was 24 when I divorced. I think he probably got married to a 21-year-old at the time. I think she was 22 or 21. So it's like 3 years younger than me or so. And at that time, I'm nowhere to be seen. No one knows me, no one knows where I went, and everyone is just going talking bad about me. And my mom is in those circles, you know, in the community, still in the church, pastoring another church that is associated with the church that he was in. And there was just so much stigma, even against my mom, as if she was a bad mother that couldn't teach me how to be a proper wife, that couldn't teach me how to hold a marriage together. And, you know, she continued. She'd come back and tell me the stories of who said what and what they didn't say and all that. And she'd say to me, but it's okay. You know, God is going to redeem us one day. And I believed her. You know, I actually believed that it was going to happen. I continued. But funny enough, that once I left that marriage, a lot of things began to open at work. In the 1 month into my divorce, after my divorce was finalized, I was given a new position at work. That was the first time I flew on a plane to Cape Town. And then I think a week after, I flew to Germany. That was my first international trip at the age of 24. My career was just opening up. I was performing better at school because, remember, they were paying for me. I was performing better at school, and then I started to, you know, rekindle my commitment to the ministry of the calling upon my life. And I started to host a conference, and it was like a domino effect. Everything just started falling into place. It started aligning. I was more focused, and I decided now to reestablish myself back into social media, and it literally exploded. You know, everything exploded, and we are here, you and I, you know. And I think the one thing about me is that I do not succumb to societal pressure. That's one thing about me. That's why even at school, when, you know, they talk of peer pressure a lot, our kids are in a risk to be peer pressured by somebody, either into drugs or smoking or, you know, sexual promiscuity and a whole lot of things. I was never that girl. There was nothing you could do to convince me to smoke a cigarette. I don't care if you laughed at me or you thought that I was uncool or you bullied me, but you couldn't cause me to succumb. And because I grew up with that mentality, I was immune. I felt like I was immune to the stigma of society. I didn't care what society said or wanted to say or was saying about me. I mean, people in my street were laughing at me. You'd be walking, you hear people talking about me. You would hear a debate or an altercation next door that has nothing to do with you, but your name is going to be in that conversation. And you like heard that before, see, you know? And I really couldn't care, because to me, what was important was the space that I was in currently, because they were not there when I was in the pain. They were not there when I was being hit. They didn't feel my scars. They didn't bleed with me. They were not depressed with me. They didn't come to a point where they almost committed suicide. So I could have not taken the societal stigma and carried myself with it, or fear to do things because of what society was going to do to me. And I think that's a lesson that we should all learn, that save your marriage if you can, do all that you can. We are here as professionals. You have professionals in your society, in your city, in your town, in your village. Seek help. Do everything that you can. Read, take books, audio, listen to things, listen to Cleveland. There's so many ways that you can improve yourself as a wife, as a husband. There's a lot of resources out there. Exhaust every avenue that you can. But if you've done all that you can, and your significant other's not joining the party, there's no need to continue with something like that. If you feel like you've exhausted all avenues and you know that this is now infiltrating into your destiny, your purpose, I don't feel like that's a good environment to be around. And if stigma is something that you fear, you need to be strong, because it is you that's suffering, not the society that's going to laugh at you. And to those who are already divorced that are feeling the stigma, I can tell you right now, you need to focus on who you are and what you are meant to do on this earth. That's all I did. I didn't try to defend myself. I didn't try to walk around convincing people that I'm not what my ex-husband says. I didn't try to convince my people that I was the perfect wife, but he messed up, or vice versa. No, I lived my life. I watered my plant. I didn't walk around trying to, remove all the bad words out of people's mouths. I created a platform for myself. I created a platform for my name. I focused on my goals and my dreams. I shut the stigma out. I shut societal pressure and words and condemnation. And what's interesting is that in that, I found people that embraced me regardless of my divorce. So in the journey of divorce, you will find people that embrace you, and you'll be shocked. I was shocked at the people that embraced me. I was shocked at the people that welcomed me into their platforms. I was shocked at the people that invited me even to their homes. Big names, people that are, that have established themselves. They didn't reject me. And had I succumbed to the stigma of society, I would have ended up condemning myself. I would have ended up oppressing myself, or rather being overwhelmed by their oppression. I would have ended up in depression. I probably would have killed myself, but I refused. I shut the noise out. I literally shut the noise out, and I focused on myself. I focused on what I can deliver in the world. I focused on what I was destined to do in this world. And the more I did that, I kid you not, I promise you, it's like there was a vindication that took place, because the very same people in those days that were really propelling the stigma on me, she shouldn't be called into our churches, she's a divorcee, the husband say this about, this is her dirty laundry, that's what she's done, she's that kind of a person, were people that 4 years later, when God placed me in the platforms He wanted, they were calling me in their churches. There was a voice note that was leaked, that I heard, I think, late last year. And one of the very people that were driving the stigma against me was saying in the voice note, have you guys seen Phindile, Innocentia, Mazindo? She's on TV, she's doing TV and radio interviews, and she's doing that. We groomed her, she's from our church. We groomed her.
Oh,
And
okay.
that was a complete 360-degree change, and it's because I let my purpose speak for me. I let my destiny speak for me. I let my identity and my true self, my achievements, my accolades speak for me. They vindicated me. They redeemed me in the eyes of society that had a stigma against me because of divorce. So I was no longer labeled the divorcee. I was not labeled the one who's on TV, the one who's on radio interviews, yeah, my name changed. They it changed in their own lips, and I was no longer the divorcee. And so it's possible to pick up the pieces of your life. And one of the biggest lessons is shut out the noise that society is creating around you. Whether, even if it's friends, if you have to discard of the friends that condemning you because of your divorce, get rid of them. Even if you remain with one friend, that's okay. You don't need an entire society. I know it takes a village to raise a kid, I get that, but there comes a point in your time when you are now raised, you're no longer a kid. You don't need the entire village. Oh my goodness, I feel like preaching now. You don't need an you don't need an
Would you
entire
say,
village, you know?
would you say
Yeah.
that most of the advices that we are given just before getting married by the older women put pressure on us to stay in relationships that are actually killing us, because you are told that you should be you should persevere,
Yeah.
should be patient, you should just be silent even when things are going south. You should just accept the situation. Would you say that plays a big role in how women stay in marriages that are not working for them and towards their destiny? Would you say that would be the case? And how would we be able to navigate between the two? Because we can't live without um, advices or maybe being given a word of wisdom. But what if that word of wisdom is not applying to you and your destiny at the time? So what would you say, how would you say we navigate both?
That's an absolutely beautiful question. Firstly, I'd like to commend the older woman in our lives. You know, I'm going to speak it in our language, ngesiZulu. We say, indlela ibizwa kwabaphambili. So to translate it in English, basically you seek advice and wisdom from people who have walked the road before you or ahead of you. So it's very imperative to take the time to listen to, whether it's your parents, whether it's your grandmother, your aunt. Always have an open ear to hear wisdom from those who are older than you. Because firstly, they've seen life, you know, they've seen most of life, not all of it, not what you've also seen by your age, but they've seen most of it. So always lend a ear to hear. Now, I think where we have to draw the line when it comes to considering the advice in our lives or applying it is that it's very, very simple. It's true we should persevere. It's true we should stick around. We should do our best. I stayed in that marriage for 4.5 years. I tried in that 4.5 years. So it was a lot of strive in the 4.5 years. It was a lot of pain. So I didn't just get married and then tomorrow I decided to divorce. No, it was 4 years of anguish. I tried. I exhausted all avenues, as I mentioned earlier. So it's true what they're saying, and I love their advice. We really need to work hard because, you know, like anything in life, marriage is a lot of challenges. So you have to work through things. You have to forgive. You have to persevere. You have to, you know, remain. You have to be humble. You have to keep quiet. You know, allow those things to happen in such a way that once you decide to leave, you have no regrets. You know that you've done it all. You've exhausted your patience. You've exhausted perseverance. You've done all that you can to retain your husband or your wife, and you have to come to a point where you say, what's that law term? Without reasonable doubt, this marriage can no longer work. Let there be evidence that without reasonable doubt, this marriage can no longer work. You know, let the evidence be, we've called family members, we've called our faith leader, we have gone to professional psychologists, therapists, we've done it all, but everything has failed. You know, I've taken the advices of the older women, of the older men, my elders. I've heard, I've listened, I've adhered to what they've said, I've applied what they've said, but we're at crossroads where we've realized that this thing doesn't work. And so how you draw the line, it's if the advisors that they give you puts you in a predicament of suffocating and a predicament where you feel condemned. Now, it's no longer that you're persevering because you have to, it's the hardships of life, or, you know, you're going through a moment with your husband, 2 weeks of silence, those things are normal. But if you can feel that now this thing is infiltrating into your mental health, it's deteriorating your own health, you are physically being abused, that you're at a threat of this man killing you or this woman killing you, you're at a threat where this person is actually intimidating you, and they're even threatening to, you know, there are some spouses that threaten to come to your workplace and expose you to your bosses or things like that. If it starts jumping those boundaries, with all due respect to our elders, we cannot continue with their advices. We cannot, you know. We live in a different generation. We live in times. Some of our mothers, because I like when you started, you wanted to base this on women. Some of our mothers had no other choice. They didn't have work. Coming home and divorcing and returning from a marriage was not an option. Your parents would kick you out and tell you to go back. It was like sort of a patriarchal society or system where, the man, is above the woman and women are nothing. We don't live in such a society. Things are evolving. They're evolving in countries, even in third world countries. It's evolving even in countries where really women were condemned up to until the 21st century, but even things are changing there. And it's taking a completely different narrative. And because of that, we are no longer forced to stay just because of money. We are no longer forced just to stay because we don't have a roof over our head. We are more independent now. We've got jobs, we've got businesses. I can walk into Mercedes-Benz and buy a car. I can start my own business. I'm self-sufficient, and it's good. And this is one of the things that I was telling my husband the other day, not my ex, my current husband. It's another story for another day. I was telling my current husband that I want to teach women to be self-sufficient, because then when you are in marriage and you're married, it means that it's for one reason alone, because you love that person and you want to fulfill purpose and destiny with them. Nothing else, It's not about the money. It's not about where will I go. It's not about can I make it without this man, And I think our mothers back then, when they give us such advices, they're giving these advices based on, the condemnation they were under. And they really had no other choice but to succumb to the abuse. They had no other choice but to live with the abuse. And so we need to just filter those advices according to those boundaries. Filter whether is it feasible to apply the advices in this day and age now, with your destiny at hand. Is it worth dying for this marriage? Do you really want to leave that house in a coffin and go and then the next thing he marries another wife tomorrow? Is that the legacy you want to live? Do you want to be known by the woman who was killed by her husband because she didn't have the strength to leave the marriage? And so if the advices of your elders are going to lead you into the grave, we need to draw the line. And when you draw the line, it's not like you're going to go back to your elder and go, well, your advice is so bad and you're just a terrible advice. No, they don't even have to know that you're not applying it. They will see that you're alive and they'll see that you're doing well, but always lend an ear to your elders and learn to filter the advices such that they work for you.
You touched on something that's very important for me. The difference, some people don't know the difference between being self-sufficient and being independent.
Yes.
And I believe there is a major difference between the two, because being self-sufficient means that I need you, but I can do whatever I need from you should I need to.
Yes.
But independence basically says, well, I can't do it all by myself. You do it. I need you to have this thing done. But self-sufficiency means, in my view, I can do what you can do, but my preference is that you do it because you are my head. But should you not do it, I will be in a space to do it by my own.
100%.
Would you say that is something that we need to instill in young women? Yes. And in women that are older? Because remember, we cannot focus on younger women. There are women who are older now who are in a position that they are afraid to get out of the marriage because of the years, and also that they've been so dependent, on the spouse. Would you say that it's something that women need to be aware of?
Certainly. And again, I just want to reiterate that we are not under any circumstance way condoning divorce. We are not. This is not what the show is about. I don't think that's what your vision is about. I just want that to be clear in people's minds. We are not saying God then divorce. All we are saying is that you have to know thyself. And when you know thyself, you will know that you don't have to succumb to abuse under any given circumstance. And what will alleviate that is when you learn to equip yourself equip yourself
Mhm.
with necessary resources to be successful financially, to be successful even emotionally, like be emotionally present with yourself, be emotionally independent, because if you start depending on your spouse for happiness and joy and peace, that's where this whole thing is going to break, because they're going to sense that vulnerability and they're going to play with it. They're going to sense that you love them too much and they're going to abuse you, and they will say things to you just to corner you so that you can feel loved by them. They're going to manipulate you, right? And so you have to also be independent emotionally and financially and educationally. I don't know how it's like with other countries, but in South Africa, we have funding. We have funding for studies. You can go and apply. It's a government funding. You apply, you can get a qualification. There are so many short courses on this, short courses on that. I mean, if you open up your Instagram, your YouTube, there's so many people that are teaching how to cook, how to sew, how to do hair, how to do makeup. All those things are skills that you can use as an old woman without a PhD, without a degree, without finishing school, that you can use your hands. I mean, some older women know how to cook better than we can. You can easily open a cooking school in your village. Just gather women, charge them a certain fee every Saturday, and start a cooking school. There are women that don't know how to cook, and out of that alone, you can start a business that can cause you to flourish. And if you are financially well off, or you're doing well financially and you're able to take care of yourself, it's not easy for you to stay in an abusive marriage or be hurt or hit by this person, because you know that you have that financial freedom. At any time when you know that I've exhausted all avenues, I've come to my wits, this is the end, I can't take it anymore, else I will die, you know that you can just walk away, because you're financially free, you're emotionally free, right? You are strong, you are equipped. And it's important that we realize that we have to be self-sufficient and we have to be independent, not codependent on our spouses, but independent, being able to do things for ourselves, being sufficient enough to do everything that we are able to. And I like how you started by saying, I can do it by myself and for myself, but I still need the head to be the head. So I still need the head to be the provider. I still need the head to lead the family and make decisions. We will always give our husbands that honor, right? But just because we're giving them that honor, it does not mean that we cannot build ourselves up. It does not mean that we cannot develop ourselves as people. We are made, in the image of God. I don't know how. I don't want to offend anybody, because not everybody believes in Jesus. Not everybody believes in God, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to those who do, we believe that we are made in the image of God. We believe that we are made to bring some form of contribution to the world. As an individual, as a woman, you shouldn't leave the world how you found it. You should leave it a different place. You should impact people's lives. So I mean, by me saying this, I'm saying to you that you have a certain purpose in your life, and you can't let that purpose die down because of your marriage, because somebody's condemning you. Yes, you have to take care of your home. Yes, you have to love your husband. Yes, you have to honor and respect your husband. You have to take care of your kids. You have to build a beautiful environment and ambience in your home. When you walk in, they need to know that mom is home, wifey is home. You have to do all of that, but that's not all you're limited to. That's not all that you were made out to be. We were not made out just to be pregnant, barefooted, and by the stove all the time. We've got wisdom, we've got intelligence, we've got greatness, we have got ideas, we've got opportunities. We are creators, we are inventors, and we need to put all these potentials that we have in use. And I feel like till this day and age, women have died with such great potential. You can look in history, and most people that have invented things are men. I don't think it's because women had less ability to invent. It's just that they were never given an opportunity. I think had women been given an opportunity, you could hear that it was, Jenny Ford that created Ford instead of Harrison Ford, for example. I feel like that women were oppressed so much that we still feel like we cannot do it by ourselves or without men. We are still taught that without a man we are nothing. Hence, young women are running for marriage. They're running towards marriage, and the first thing they think about is marriage, not studies, not starting a business, not finding themselves, not equipping themselves, not developing themselves. It's all about, let me get a second surname, let me change my surname and put a ring on my finger. And that has to stop. It has to stop, and it has to start with our older generation, as you say. They need to know that they're able. And I'm talking from an experience with my mom, because I grew up without a father, and to this day my mom never got married, but that woman was such a warrior. She did it all for us. She went and she made sure that she took care of us. And I think I learned so many lessons from my mom, that I knew from a young age that even if I get married, I am enough. I am enough. If a man drops me, if he walks out on me, if he cheats on me and he thinks another woman is better, I'm enough. And that's why when I divorced, a lot of people break post-divorce. They break. They can't handle it. They break down. That was the strongest and most resourceful point in my life. There's always a point in one's life where it's a peak where you are most resourceful. I was most resourceful post my divorce, because I took back my power. I took back my power from my ex-husband. Remember, he was abusive, not just physically, but emotionally. I mean, that man used to call me stupid. At that time, I'm studying a qualification. I'm working for one of the biggest German companies in the world, multi-billionaire company. And this man, with all my exposure that I'm getting, he's calling me stupid. And there was a lot of things that he condemned me, that my self-esteem went down. At that time, I didn't dream of owning a house or building a house or having a car or even having a driver's license, for crying out loud. At the age of 20, I was already condemned. That man he condemned me in that 4 years that I was in that marriage. So the second I got out of that marriage, I was in my most resourceful state. I was such a dreamer. I had so many goals. I wanted to attain so much. I took that power back that I learned from my mom, that I can make it on my own. I don't have to have a second surname to do that. I don't have to have a ring on my finger to do that. And, this is what women need to know. And so when you are married to somebody, you need to know that it's all about purpose and destiny. It's about, fulfilling each other's purpose and destiny and assisting one another to fulfill your purpose and destiny. It's not about condemnation. And so you stay there knowing who you are, knowing thyself, as I mentioned earlier, having that the strength and the willpower, the resilience that I'm powerful. I am educated. I am a businesswoman. I know this. I know that I may not have a PhD. I may not be a billionaire, but I'm able to do women's hair, 5 women a week. You're a businesswoman, you're an entrepreneur, you can do that. You can take your power with the smallest of things, And I think sometimes we get so intimidated by seeing these women in power, and we think that we all have to be up there. No, it starts in your village, it starts in your town, it starts with your hands, it starts with those soft skills you have, it starts with the hard skills that you have. It's the small things. It's a lot that you can do. I like sharing this story. There's a woman in South Africa, Ukok Mahlangu. She's a doctor now, she's Dr. Mahlangu. She has a PhD, an honorary PhD, and this woman has never gotten an education. I think she's never gone to school. I don't think she knows how to write her name. She's never gone to school. She doesn't know how to write her name. I think she's currently in her 70s or 80s. She got an honorary doctorate 3 years ago or so. And all because there's a tribe called Amdebele. And she Ndebeles like painting, so they paint like a lot of patterns, squares and triangles, and they know how to put them together. And it's just a skill that the Ndebele tribe learns, a tribe in South Africa. And that's all she did. She used to paint ornaments and, paint a lot of things as a child. And so they opened sort of like a village store around where she used to live, and she taught a lot of people how to paint. She was making money out of it, just to paint, a skill that she learned from probably her great-grandmother. It was just passed down in the village. No education, no structure, nothing, just those paintings, little by little, up to a point that people started recognizing this Ndebele pattern. It became fabric, it became that, it just grew, and she grew as well. A lot of people always wanted to flock to where she was just to get a hold of her ornaments, up to a point that now big brands were calling her to start painting things. Nike called her the one time to paint a Nike sneaker. People call it Nike, others call it Nike. But Nike called her to paint a a sneaker. And if I'm not mistaken, it was BMW, Mercedes-Benz in BMW. I mean, such a huge German brand called that woman from a remote village in South Africa, uneducated, no money, nothing. They called her to come paint a white BMW in those patterns that she learned from the Devila tribe. And the woman had a lot of money. That's an endorsement. That's a brand deal. That woman has more money than me, and she's got an honorary doctorate. I probably still have to work for that. I have like 2 more degrees to still go. And she's an old woman that literally maximize the potential that she has. She basically went, what do I have now that I can work with now? And that's all we need as women. That's all we need. Married or not, divorced or not, that's all you need. What do you have there? Because the reason why I think you and I are both stressing this, is because with gender-based violence, and that's unfortunately a very big thing in South Africa, in our country. Gender-based violence, the abuse of women that stay in marriages they don't want to. It's all because of lack of financial independency and financial freedom. That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. And so once we can break that, we will see that women will regain their power. And when a woman regains her power and she becomes more educated, she has a skill, she makes money, it is not leverage for her to disrespect her husband. That's not what we are saying. It's not leverage for her to dishonor her husband. That's not what we are saying. It's just saying that she is just leaving her mark in the world. She is fulfilling her purpose and honoring her husband at the same time.
From the other perspective, it is frustrating for a man to also carry everything.
Yes,
although they would like to make it appear that they've got this. But we women as also do frustrate our partners, because you want this kind of lifestyle, you want this, but there's no contribution from you. And you assume that the roles that you're supposed to be doing are enough for or to warrant what you are requesting. So it's not from that perspective that you should dishonor your husband or your spouse, but also the contribution that you bring into the marriage should be equal, you understand, in order not to frustrate the other spouse. So before we go on an ad break, and we move on to the next chapter, would be as women, and how would we be able to, how should we contribute towards the development of our own spouses, aside, because it's very hard most of the time to penetrate a man in terms of getting him to do certain things, because they've already had a vision of how they want their life to turn out. But how would you advise that we channel certain things in order for your purpose and his purpose not to clash? Because that's what happens most of the time. We need you online. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry about that. I was saying that, it's a very important question. Somebody asked me in an interview, I think 2 weeks ago, and said to me, how would you define marriage? And I basically say, marriage is when two people come together to fulfill a purpose, a common purpose as a couple, and to support one another in their individual purposes. So that's the whole ideology that I have around marriage. It goes far beyond, you have to pay the bills and have to clean the house. No, those are just it's secondary roles. Yeah, it's just chores. Yeah, it's not even the primary mandatory role. The most important thing is the destiny and the purpose that the two of you have to fulfill individually and as a couple as well. And if you can come together with that mindset, you will be able to work in congruence. Sit down, have the conversation. What is your goal? What is your vision? What is your purpose? How can I support you? Do these visions or the purpose marry one another? Do they overlap? How can I support you? How would I? This is how I would like you to support me. So it's a lot. It has a lot to do with communication. Once you communicate, you're able to filter everything. You're able to define everything. You define the roles that you have in supporting me and in my purpose, and vice versa. And once you're able to define who does what and how we support one another, seldom will there be clashes, because everything will be in place. Everything will be archived and filed properly. Everyone knows what to do, what not to do, and whatever. Inevitably about life, there will be one or two occurrences where there will be that overlap, perhaps that bit of clash, but it won't be so severe, because at least you've spoken about it. You have an understanding of who you are married to. They have an understanding of who they are married to, and because you've spoken, you've defined the roles, you've defined what is expected of the other party, you work at it together. It is not an easy space at all. But if you do it together, and that the goal is to do it together, it becomes a beautiful thing. It becomes what people call a power couple. And power couples are made from a lot of hard work. It's a lot of hard work that comes with it, because there's the intimacy part of it, there's the marriage part of it, there's the business part of it, there's the purpose part of it, and you all have to make sure that you cover all these roles and you balance everything out. You have to give adequate attention to all these roles and still be able to find time together to spend with one another, to hear one another out, to support one another. It's a lot that goes into it. It's a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it produces beautiful results, because the one person that you have become one in union with is your biggest cheerleader, is your biggest supporter. That's important. Then nothing can break you, because they can't sabotage you. It's very painful to ask somebody to carry your purpose and your vision with you that ultimately sees you as a competitor. It's easy for them to sabotage you. But your spouse can't sabotage you, because if they sabotage you, they sabotage themselves. Especially when you start interlinking your purposes together. He knows, or she will know, that once I do anything to hurt her purpose or her identity, it's going to reflect back on me. So it's very important that we have those conversations. It's very important that we extend that support, we extend that helping hand to our spouse, and we are there for them, every little way. You may not understand the industry, but you need to find ways on how to support them. For the longest of time, I was not interested in anything that has to do with psychology, though, I had an idea of it, but because I had to support my husband and that's the field that I was in, a funny thing was, I was on a national radio station last week with a industrial psychologist, and I'm just a certified life coach. And then yesterday, and I'm just a certified life coach. And so yesterday, my husband sends me a message when I was at work. He says, "You were actually with one of my colleagues. The lady that was on radio with you was one of my colleagues. She's an industrial psychologist." I'm like, oh my God. And then he says, this is what she wants from you. She needed some form of assistance from me, and this really shows that I went so far to support my husband in literally his career, because I didn't study psychology. I studied commerce. I'm in corporate, and of course I did life coaching. I'm a certified accredited facilitator and personal development coach and NLP practitioner. That's the route that I took on top of my commercial qualification or my corporate job. But because I was so fixated in supporting him in his purpose and in his career, I ended up knowing so much about psychology, that even some of his other colleagues are like, is your wife a psychologist? Should she not come and work with us, because they work for a university, they are lecturers, and they were like, but shouldn't she submit her resume or a CV to come and lecture? My husband would be like, no, she's not a psychologist. She doesn't even have a psychology profession qualification. And they would be so shocked because of how eloquent I am when it comes to the topic of psychology, or psychology as a subject, or as a study. It's because I drew so much attention into supporting him that it rubbed off on me. So I'm just trying to create a clear picture on what it means to support your spouse at your very best with their purpose, and you get to rub off one another. You get to learn things that you didn't know. You get to even excel in industries that you don't even have qualifications on. That's the power of working together in your purpose.
Okay. We are about to go on a short break. Do stay with us. We are with Mrs. Phindile Mazindo. Such great wisdom shared so far. So let's go on an ad break. Stay with us. We'll be back in a short while. Thank you.
Clevenard in Diaspora Television is an internet online TV service. What sets us apart is a unique combination of hit African content, first and exclusive international free movies, series, musics, news, events, documentaries, tourism, teleshopping shows, youth TV programs, and live interviews. Clevenard Diaspora Television is available throughout sub-Saharan Africa and to the diaspora markets worldwide. Take your entertainment with you wherever you go. Watch on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, smart TV, depending on your device. Watch free movies with Clevenard Movies Television. Stop searching for free movies websites and watch Clevenard Movies Television. Watch your favorite African shows anywhere at any time. Don't forget to check out our top 5 TV channels created to get you informed. TV1, Clevenard in Diaspora Television. TV2, Clevenard Youth Television. TV3, Clevenard Movies Television. TV4, Clevenard Teleshopping Television. TV5, Clevenard Tourism Television. To start watching, sign up at www.clevenard.com and follow the easy steps. Once you're done, log into the Clevenard website or app on your device, click on any one of our 5 TV channels, and hit play. We will be very satisfied and happy to welcome you to our team as one of our new business partners. Contact info@clevenard.com +34 631 279811. Website www.clevenard.com.
Welcome back to Women of Authority Africa on Clevenard TV in Diaspora. We are still with Mrs. Phindile Mazindo. We are about to close this episode, but look out for part 2, which is coming out soon. Mrs. Mazindo, in closing, what would you give us as the tools to overcome the stigma of divorce?
I think I've mentioned a lot of them, but I'll try and sum it up by saying that you need to know who you are. And once you know who you are, you will love yourself enough to know that you can't stay in that situation, regardless of the stigma that you'll experience from people. And once you are out of it and here you're faced with stigma, you need to shut the noise out. Whether people are talking about you, they're laughing about you, they're rejecting you, you have to literally swallow that as a hard stone and continue to move on. This is the time where the resilience you has to pop up. You have to have this attitude of rebounding and resilience, and despite what is happening all around you, you know who you are internally, and so you will focus on that. The idea is to focus on your goals, what you couldn't do, what the marriage deprived you of. This is the time for you to rekindle yourself with yourself, rekindle the aspirations, the goals, the ambitions, the dreams, the vision, the purpose, the identity, the destiny. Reconnect and rekindle with all those things and know who you are and start planning your life. It's not going to be easy, so it's also good to get help, professional help, get counseling, healing, therapy, coaching, whatever you need to do, because all those things will help you shut out the stigma. It will help you not focus on the stigma. It will help you grow. And as you continue to apply these things, as you continue to focus on yourself, as you continue to focus on improving yourself, growing yourself, and developing yourself, you will find yourself at the top. You will find that you've healed quicker from the pain. You found yourself far ahead in the journey. And on top of it all, you will realize that the more you keep going, that's the more the stigma actually decreases and loses power. That's the more people's voices no longer matter to you. That's the more where the pain and the hurt of the divorce and the stigma really doesn't affect you anymore. And you just embrace fully who you are and you find love again. Another thing is that you actually do find love again. What I would also advise is that make sure that when you enter into the new marriage relationship, you do not enter with your old scars, because you're going to bleed on your partner. In fact, let me correct that. Let me rather say, don't enter with your wounds, because at least the scar is a wound that is covered and that is healed. So scars are okay, but wounds are very dangerous. So don't enter your new relationship or marriage with a wound that will bleed on the next person. Ensure that you have healed, ensure that you know who you are, ensure that you found yourself post divorce, and you understand what your goals, dreams, and aspirations are. And this time around, you will be a little bit wiser when you choose your spouse, because you will understand what you want in life and what you certainly don't want. You will know now that you have the ability to continue the journey with someone that is compatible to you.
Oh, thank you so much. It has been a lovely episode that we had today. The subject on overcoming the stigma of divorce and finding love will be continuing with Mrs. Mazindo very soon on this subject. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you've learned something out of this episode, and we hope that you have been empowered and the wisdom that we have been given you has been imparted into the right ground, because when you sow a seed into the wrong ground, then it germinates something that is completely incorrect. But we are not condoning divorce. We are actually encouraging marriages, healthy marriages, and we are encouraging healthy mindset in women, and we are encouraging godly principles in women, especially Christian women. So tonight we thank Mrs. Mazindo and pass our regrets to Mr. Mazindo. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us on Women of Authority, Africa and Cleveland TV in Diaspora. It is a channel that promotes African content and African people. Please do call us or do contact us should you need to place an advert on any of our shows at info@cleveland.com. Go to our website, clevernet.com, and sign up. And also, what you could do is actually download our app on Google and iStore, and just go through. There's a blog spot there. There's movies. There's TV channels, other tourism channels. You can actually learn a lot from a lot of people from outside of other countries. So let's meet next time. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. God bless. Unonzaba, unondumiso, nondumiso ngcizela. Unonzaba, signing out. Good night.